Good afternoon and welcome to the World War II Discussion Forum's Winter and Spring series of lectures. I'm Gregory McNiff, the executive founder and executive director of the group. A little too much executive in there. Before I introduce this afternoon's speaker, I want to briefly cover the usual housekeeping items. First, our speaker has graciously agreed to take questions after his prepared remarks. You have two ways to ask a question. You can either use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I will read out your question to our speaker, or if you prefer to ask your question directly, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and I will call on you to unmute your line. Regardless, please be respectful of our speaker and the audience when asking your question. We'll take about 10 to 15 minutes of questions and go to maybe a little after 2 p.m. New York time. Second, donations are always appreciated. Please note there's a donate tab on the website. Third, we now have a YouTube channel. Please see the icon at the top of the website. And this talk will be recorded and uploaded to that channel shortly afterwards. Fourth and finally, you can send any feedback through the website at wwiidf.org. Now to this afternoon's speaker, and someone I'm thrilled to have back. Captain Arthur W. Gullachsen is the author of 3 previous books, as well as being a fellow of the Royal Historical Society and a professor in the RMC History Department at the Royal Military College of Canada in Kingston, Ontario, which is where he's joining us from today. After joining the Canadian Armed Forces in late 26, he gained acceptance into the PhD program in history at Western University in London, Ontario, graduating in 2016. A Second World War II specialist, Captain Gullachsen's areas of expertise include the study of the replacement of equipment and personnel losses, as well as German armored forces during the late war period. He is also interested in 20th century air power and sea power. He recently published Bloody Verrieres, volumes 1 and 2 with Casemate, and he has spoken to us on, I believe, the second volume of that recently. And today he's actually going to speak to us on the second volume of his book, The Defeat and Attrition of the SS-Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, Volume 2. It actually, Arthur, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it comes out in late February, at least, yeah.
Oh, it's on sale right now with Casemate in the United States, Pen and Sword in the UK,
Oh, perfect.
and RZM Imports as well. My good friend Remy Spazzano, if you guys know that name, RZM Imports for military history books. But yeah, it's out there as we speak.
Oh, perfect. And I'm going to pretty much hand it over to Arthur. I'll just note that this second volume chronicles the SS-Panzerdivision's battles in Normandy and its eventual attrition. With that, we're thrilled to have Arthur back for an encore performance, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh, hello everybody, and hopefully you can see my screen there, screen saving. There we are. So this is what the presentation's on. You see the cover of the book there, Defeat and Attrition of the 12th SS-Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend. It's volume 2. This is the continuation of the story. The first one, which came out last fall through Casemate, my publisher. There's volume 1, and it dealt with, I'll just move on to the next slide here. The defeat of the 12th SS Panzer-Division to drive the Canadian and British forces back into the sea on the eastern side of the Normandy beachheads, or bridgehead, I should say, and the fighting right up until the 10th, 11th of June. And it's a continuation of the story of the defeat of the 12th SS Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, which is comprised mostly of its rank of file being ex-Hitler Youth members, molded onto a cadre of officers and NCOs coming from the 1st SS Panzerdivision, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, which had fought in Russia. So my idea was to use this tank division, this armored division, this panzer division, as a case study to explain in very detailed terms exactly how the Germans lost in Normandy. So the main thesis of this second book, and I'll show it to you guys here on camera, there it is with the sort of orange cover and a Tiger tank on the front of it, that this panzer division, this very much armored, mobile, cutting edge of the Panzerwaffe, the German tank arm, was hopelessly stuck in static warfare, rather than using its mobility to dart around the battlefield and conduct armored counterattacks as it was envisioned it would fight. And of course, it's been given all these resources, but in this static role, it's sort of pinned in place, and the British Second Army has their way with it in that they pummel it to pieces over the course of the 11th of June, 12th of July, 1944 period. So yes, it's so stuck in this static defense, and this leads to its eventual destruction. That's the main thesis, or main central idea. But what if it could move? These terrible challenging factors for the German in Normandy, the lack of fuel and Allied air supremacy, every single Thunderbolt Mustang, RAF Typhoon Spitfire that was ever, or U.S. Army Air Force Lightning that was ever produced is flying in the skies above Normandy. So we have this endless combat. And unlike the US forces and the British forces and the Canadian forces, there's no constant reinforcement. German forces are simply fought until there's nothing left to fight with. They're down to the last tank and the last couple of hundred of men. And in the 12th SS-Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, it's the same. They're bled white. And so the story takes up exactly where the first SS Panzer Corps had failed in the initial race to reach the beaches. Of course, we talked about in the first book the Great Panzer controversy, where the leaders of Panzergruppe West in France wanted to hold the Panzer divisions away from the beaches, a huge distance away, and fight sort of a battle of encirclement in deep within France with the invading forces of the Allies, and defeat them in that way. And then, on the other hand, the commander of Army Group B, Erwin Rommel, the famous general from North Africa, he wanted to place the Panzer divisions very, very close to the beaches because he realized that if he didn't Dunkirk them and encircle them and force the American and British and Canadian forces back into the sea within a couple of days, that was it. The situation would be exactly like it had turned out in Sicily, in Italy, and there's an Anzio, and there's no getting rid of them, no ejecting them. So this had robbed Rommel of the resources he needed to strike first and strike quickly, and the Panzer divisions were stuck in this terrible grind of traffic and nonstop fighter bomber attack as they tried to get to the invasion beaches. And suddenly the idea of the interior battle with the Panzer Group West commander Gerd von Schwappenberg is thrown completely out the window. It's as if it was never an idea. And the Panzer divisions raced in, but waiting for them are the British and the Canadian forces, and in a series of battles, the anti-tank forces, as well as the artillery forces, as well as the tactical air forces, pummel the Germans and defeat all their attacks. So where does this leave us? On the 12th of June, we have the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, if you can see the slide there. Then there's the 50th British Infantry Division and the British 3rd Infantry Division. And we have the beginning of 2 corps here, the 30th Corps and the 1st Corps. And this is confronting the defeated panzer divisions of the 1st SS Panzer Corps, these being Panzer Lehr, the Hitlerjugend in the middle. And beside Colin, you see it on the right side there, the 21st Panzer Division. Now, these divisions at this stage, 12th of June, they're all still fairly not fresh. Their nose is bloodied, but they're still somewhat intact. But behind them, there's no real infantry divisions to come in and take on the role of a static defense, allowing the armored divisions to carry out their mobile operations or armored counterstrokes to maneuver against the Allies, the British and the Canadians. And this is the wonderful tank country near Caen. It's still very good, but the further west you get, the more it becomes the bocage, the hedges, the enclosed little roads. They're almost like tunnels, where tanks have tremendous trouble even traversing their turrets to get their barrels around, with all these blind corners. and you can't see really a kilometer in front of you. So the wonderful guns of the German tanks, the Panthers, the Tigers, the Panzer IVs, they're largely negated in the fact that they can't really fight a armored battle on the steppes of Russia. Well, near Caen they can, but it gets very, very limited the further west you go. But that's where the British are. And with their emerging now Second Army, which encompasses the 30th Corps and the First Corps initially, and yes, but there's no new reserves coming in to backstop these panzer divisions. So they're forced into the role of infantry divisions to halt and conduct a static defense, halting the Allies from moving in. And the German commanders, now that they've been defeated, they have to wait for further reinforcements to come in to relieve them, to allow them to go onto the offensive again. So events to the west. Now, like I said, the Germans were forced with their mobile divisions. They're the only ones that could get there quick enough. And all the Atlantic Wall divisions in the bunkers and pillboxes have been largely destroyed. One of them that was guarding the beach, Omaha Beach, with the 352nd Infantry Division, if you look at the map there on the right side of the slide, it's being overwhelmed. And during the fighting from the 6th of June all the way to the 10th of June has been ground down by U.S. forces, the 2nd Infantry Division, the 29th Infantry Division, and the 1st U.S. Infantry Division. These are all of the 1st Army of Omar Bradley and the 5th Corps. And it happens, the 352nd Infantry Division of the Germans collapses and begins to withdraw, in a very disorganized manner. And the U.S. forces seize the moment in advance, as well as the British forces of the 30th Corps, which is right flank facing south, the British Second Army. So this is a huge opportunity for the British. Of course, this is important. You're saying, what does this have to do with the 12th SS-Panzerdivision, Hitlerjugend? Well, certain events occur which could turn the entire flank of the 1st SS Panzer Corps and outflank it, get behind it, and suddenly envelop Caen, the city of Caen, which has been denied to the Allies from the west and from the south by a maneuvering British force, the 7th Armored Division. Operation Perch is launched, turning the flank of the Panzer-Lehr, which has enough forces to stop the British that are in front of it, but it doesn't have enough forces to extend its flank to stop them. And before they know it, the British, under General Erskine of the British 7th Armored Division, are maneuvering to get around the Germans, and they do it, and they start to turn to the east to get behind the 1st SS Panzer Corps. Then, in the nick of time, something miraculous happens, which halts the advance of the British 7th Armored Division into the rear of the 12th SS Panzer-Division Hitlerjugend. And this is something I talk about in sort of an add-on chapter within the new book. Michael Wittmann, the Tiger tank ace from the Eastern Front, arrives with the 101st Heavy Tank Battalion, the Tiger Tank Battalion, and at Villers-Bocage, where he's in a sort of a deep reserve position behind the Panzer-Lehr, he intervenes and destroys the vanguard of the British there. Later on, further Tigers from his battalion, he's just a company commander, one of 3 companies, they arrive to attack as well. Now, the British 7th Armored Division and its accompanying infantry brigade, which is part of it, as well as the armored brigade, it fights quite well, and many Tiger tanks are destroyed. Villers-Bocage is held, but the Germans fear the oncoming 2nd Panzer Division, which is arriving as fast as it can to plug this hole in the gap, this gaping hole in the front. But the determined actions of Michael Wittmann and his piece of technology, that is the Tiger tank below him, they managed to stop the British. And we see the beginnings of this phenomena which takes over in Normandy for the British Army, the Tiger tank hysteria, which is somewhat justified given the range and armor of the Tiger tank. Critics of the Tiger tank have criticized it intensively in the post-war years, saying it was unreliable, but it was very much reliable when it needed to be, when it was fighting. If you marched any sort of tank 100 kilometers on any type of roads in the year 1944, the automotive technology simply wasn't there yet. There's some tanks that were better than others, but such as the Sherman. But the Tiger tank is a tremendously potent vehicle with an excellent gun and a huge amount of armor. It can go not hugely quick, not like a Jeep or something like that, but it can get fast enough going where it needs to go. So Michael Whitman and his heavy tank battalion seize the day. The Recce battalion of the 2nd Panzer Division arrives, and suddenly, despite losing the city of Comont to the 1st U.S. Infantry Division, they establish a front below it, and the front is suddenly reestablished in front of the U.S. Army and the British Third Corps. Operation Perch is defeated in that this massive outflanking maneuver is stopped in its tracks. And if the British just had more troops, just had more armored divisions, more tanks, perhaps they could have overcome the British or the Germans, but they don't, and so they shut it down. And this giant salient is established to the west of the Panzerlehr, and the 1st SS Panzer Corps and the Hitlerjugend is saved. So, moving right along, minor combat 13th to the 16th of June. The Hitlerjugend, it pulls back a little bit on its left flank. There's 2 Panzer Grenadier regiments within every Panzer Division, and this Waffen SS Panzer Division has 2 of them, with each of them has an armored infantry, 3 armored infantry battalions in it. So on the left flank, Obersturmbannführer Wilhelm Monka, who executed a great many Canadian prisoners in the first few days of fighting after the invasion, he pulls back in the face of this monstrous reinforcement of the British, which is growing by the day. Of course, the Germans are losing the reinforcement race, and with every landing craft or tank landing craft or landing ship that lands on the beaches, it just gorges infantry battalions and squadrons of tanks faster than the Germans can get their own forces there. Of course, the railway systems and all the bridges in northern France destroyed by the transportation plan, and fighter bombers reducing the poor Germans to creatures of the night, the only time that they can drive their tanks or trucks or half-tracks or do anything is during the hours of darkness to get away from the Typhoons and the Spitfires and the Thunderbolts. And we also see the specter of naval bombardment. Of course, the British home fleet with all its battleships, the U.S. battleships supporting U.S. forces to the west. The inevitable happens on the 14th of June. The headquarters of the Hitlerjugend in Venoy is targeted, and Fritz Witt, Brigadenführer Fritz Witt, the commander of the 12th SS Panzerdivision, is killed in this naval bombardment. He's too slow to get into this foxhole, and the top of his head is ripped off, as well as part of his face, by a giant shell fragment from a shell fired from a cruiser, possibly the HMS Belfast. That's what I postulate within the book. An urgent signal is sent to the headquarters of the 25th SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment, defending the area north of Caen next to the 21st Panzer Division. And Kurt Meyer, Standartenführer Kurt Meyer, is summoned to the headquarters, and he takes over. Kurt Meyer immediately authorizes the withdrawal of the left flank of the division so it gets more in line with the Panzerlehr and shortens its front. The British don't know this. And the Germans, as the Germans are watching, they see this huge artillery bombardment, and it absolutely horrifies them that, what if we had not pulled back, and we would suffer under these huge number of shells. Thousands are launched at the former positions of the 26th SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment, which manages to pull back in time, just in time. But this very much intimidates the Germans, and they realize suddenly that this taste of massive firepower is a terrible portent of something horrible to come, something they can't fight against, which is the awesome power of the Royal Artillery, Royal Canadian Artillery, as well as the naval assets lying off Juno, Sword, and Gold Beaches. So the attrition continues. The British landing divisions as fast and as furiously as they can, now land one of their most effective divisions, the 49th West Riding Infantry Division, the 49th Infantry Division. It's called the West Riding Division, and it immediately seeks to take the tactical strong point of the Parc de Beauzolond, Le Parc de Beauzolond, which is a wonderful park with all these pathways in this wooded area with the nice little roads. And in the middle of it, they have this very nice chateau manor house, but it overlooks to its south, if you look on the map there, Fontenay-le-Pesnel. Fontenay-le-Pesnel. So the 6th Battalion of the Duke of Wellington's regiment attacks with armored support from the 8th Armored Brigade, and it manages to drive the Hitlerjugend outpost forces back. And this begins a massive battle of attrition as the Germans launch attacks both on the 17th and 18th of June, using Panzer IVs to circle around the outsides of the park. They can't really drive into it, or choose not to, because of the British anti-tank guns. But they conduct these long-range tank duels with the British and bombard the British positions, and the British bombard them, and they launch these infantry attacks. But for every single SS Panzer Grenadier that is killed or takes a bullet, wounded, captured, there's no reinforcements. So this battle for the chateau house, it takes place on the 17th of June, and the Germans don't get anywhere. Then they regroup and summon, and this is another thing, to launch these attacks, you need very heavy, massive numbers of shells for your artillery support programs. And the Germans don't have this, and they sort of have to rob Peter to pay Paul to gather up enough shells for the following day, the 18th, to attack the chateau. And Kurt Meyer makes this decision as the new division commander. He talks to the pictured fellow there, Sturmbannführer Erich Oberleiter, to take the Park Chateau, because it overlooks Fontenay-le-Pesnel with its wooded park, and they use the mentality that they have to straighten out the front line with this counterattack, which they really shouldn't do, because they're spending tanks and spending men that they don't really have. There's no replacements coming. And so this wooded area around the chateau, it becomes a scene of death and destruction. And the dead bodies, they can't take them away due to the heavy artillery fire from both sides. And Erich Oberleiter, on the course the 18th, in these battles here, he launches attack after attack. And the British, eventually, the 6th Duke of Wellington's regiment is completely destroyed by the German attacks, and it needs to withdraw. But the artillery fire from the British is so intense that the Germans also withdraw. And so the chateau and its wooded area becomes a no man's land. And the 1st Battalion, the 1st of the 7th Battalions, the Duke of Wellington's regiment, the 1st of the 6th was the one that fought in the park there. You see sometimes when the British, this is a funny practice, when they amalgamate battalions, they don't cancel one out. If they want to push the 1st and the 7th battalions together, they call it the 1st of the 7th Battalion of the Duke of Wellington's regiment. Yes, it's a very interesting practice. But yes, the Hill 102 beside it is captured by the sister battalion within the Duke of Wellington's regiment, and the British sort of stand aside and bombard the living daylights out of the chateau, which is now just a scene of death and destruction and knocked out tanks. And it sort of remains a no man's land. But the Germans pull back at the end of the night and say, enough is enough. We can't lose any more men, and we can't lose any more tanks, after several Panzer IV tanks from the 6th and 8th companies are lost. And then something very good for the Germans happens. And it's very unfortunate for the British and for the U.S. forces in the Normandy bridgehead. A huge storm arrives, and it destroys the American Mulberry Harbor, the artificial harbor to the west. But the British one survives. But the number of new tanks, half-tracks, artillery shells, new infantry battalions, all that stuff, the schedule for that Montgomery wanted to follow, of course, both him as 21st Army Group Commander, Dempsey as 2nd Army Commander, and Omar Bradley as 1st U.S. Army Commander are all under tremendous pressure that this is not to become another Anzio. We are not to be contained. We are to attack. We are to launch dynamic operations. And so At the same time, on the other side of the hill, Hitler, on the 12th of June, had made the decision to deploy the 2nd SS Panzer Corps of the brand new Panzer Divisions, 9th SS Panzer-Division Hohenstaufen and 10th SS Panzer-Division Frundsberg to the Normandy front. From Galicia, which is now part of Poland, or the White Russia, or Belarus. So the race is on, because whoever holds the initiative and can launch their massive attack first on the eastern side of the bridgehead, it is seen by using this wonderful tank country that the decision there, the decision that will decide the entire campaign, will occur there. But Oberkommando, the Wehrmacht, Hitler's headquarters of toadies such as Keitel and others, and Hitler simply lack the comprehension of the factors opposing them and what is needed regarding deployment, speed, and sheer force to defeat the Allies. And so also, this can't be forgotten, Operation Fortitude, the great deception plan to make the Germans think that the Allies are going to invade the Pas de Calais, which is the shortest point across the channel from Dover. So the infantry divisions that they needed so desperately much were still there in these fortifications in the Pas de Calais. And the Germans, even Rommel, think that this is possibly still, despite this massive effort being put into Normandy, it's still potentially just a diversion from what they think might be the real invasion, as bizarre as it seems today. So this giant plan is directed by Montgomery to occur as soon as it can, which is decided to be the 25th of June, which is the main attack going in on the 26th, a diversionary attack going in on the 25th. And of course, all the British major attacks are always named after race courses in southern England. So this one is called Epsom. And of course, it's meant to, be inspired for an armored cavalry type charge breaking out of the British side of the bridgehead. And, post-war writers, and Montgomery in his memoirs often said, well, this was a holding attack, or that was a holding attack. Then we went to draw the German armored forces onto us so the Americans could succeed. I believe that's nothing but rubbish. It's just post-war political maneuvering to cover his tracks and appear to present the argument to his readers and historians that it was all part of the master plan. Well, this master plan for this attack, this was very much, without doubt, a breakout attack using the massively powerful British 8th Corps now, which has been inserted right between the Canadians, taking over some of the Canadian positions, and the British 30 Corps. And it's decided that the reinforced British 30 Corps to the west would assault in Operation Martlet, which, through its three phase lines, was intended to draw the tank regiments of the 12th SS Panzer-Division Hitlerjugend, as well as the Panzer-Lehr, which have both been bloodied to this stage and lost about 30% of their strength, onto them to fight them and to defend this very important two important high points, the Rauray Spur and the Texel Wood, which are two big hills under which you can tactically dominate the area. And so the Germans will see this as hugely important. All their tanks will get drawn in there. We talk about Montgomery and his holding attacks to draw the German panzers away. This really was an attack to draw the German panzers away. But from Operation Epsom, which is to be spearheaded its attack by the 15th Scottish Division and be supported by the 11th Armored Division and have the 43rd Infantry Division supported as well. So we have initially three divisions stuffed into a tremendously small area and very narrow attack frontage. And there's supposed to be four stages or phase lines that they're supposed to reach, crossing the River Adon and its wooded area there, then advancing right out of a Don bridgehead onto this giant spur that goes almost all the way to Caen, which contains the two vital hills 112 and 113, which you've probably read about if you're interested in the Normandy campaign, and then reach the Orne River and exploit past it right into the rear of the 1st SS Panzer Corps, actually, after defeating it in detail and then surging to assault with the 11th Armored Division, and later on parts of the newly arriving, won't arrive until the last little tiny bits of Epsom is almost finished, the new Guards Armored Division. So, yes, this huge, and at the same time, the British 30th Corps and the 1st Corps were to attack simultaneously to help drive the German back. Once the 8th Corps, makes its breakthrough assault and crosses not one, but 2 rivers in assault crossings. So we see this dynamic attack, this hugely powerful attack, and this is not a holding attack. This is a breakout attack by this greatest army that has ever been assembled in the history of the British Empire, the British Second Army, containing, well, eventually it'll contain the 30th Corps, the 8th Corps, the 1st Corps, the 12th Corps, the 2nd Canadian Corps, eventually with, each one of these with at least 2 divisions in it. Eventually, it will split into the 1st Canadian Army, and it'll take some of the divisions and corps. But right now, at this point in time, the British are absolutely as strong as they can be. So, massive German reinforcements are needed in the way of an infantry division to replace the Hitlerjugend, pull it out so it can form battle groups that can maneuver around the countryside and fight as they are envisioned to fight with these panzer tactics. But is stuck in the static defense of meaningless villages. SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26 of Obersturmbannführer Wilhelm Monka, the war criminal, you see him there. He very much fights this all-out total war against the British Army and Canadian armies in Normandy. And this is the war that defines him. You may have seen him in the movie Downfall. He's portrayed as the last defender of Berlin. Some of you may know him from that, in his Hollywood portrayals. So it was almost like it was Flanders in 1917 in many ways for the Germans, but with strong points and defense in depth instead of trench lines and barbed wire. The artillery fire of the Royal Artillery and Royal Canadian Artillery is especially destructive. It was a meat grinder, and these battleships were still in range every time a headquarters was discovered. So the Germans became very, very paranoid about using the radio, because the British could use radio triangulation to determine their position, and the shells or the airstrikes or the broadside from the battleship Rodney or the HMS Belfast would follow soon enough. And so everything became about the field telephone or running messages from tank to tank. And life became very primitive for the Germans, and it became almost like a First World War style static warfare. And so the storm breaks. Finally, the British are ready. The storm in the English Channel is over. The British 49th West Riding Infantry Division attacks with everything it's got, and it literally attacks on the junction point between the Panzerlehr and the Hitlerjugend. The Germans managed to resist very determinedly in the small village of Fontenay-le-Pesnel, and they stop the British from advancing. But in Texel Wood, the British break through, and the Panzerlehr, which is very much a beaten, weakened force at this point, and which has the majority of its still strong forces facing the British 50th Infantry Division to the west, just simply can't resist. So the link between them is broken. And the 1st SS Panzer Corps headquarters under Sepp Dietrich, the general, the Waffen-SS general, and he's involved in the Night of the Long Knives, executing Rommel and all the Hitler's SA henchmen, that were executed at the hands of the SS. Now he's a battlefield leader, a corps commander, and he orders obviously the resumption of a link with the Panzerlehr Division to reestablish contact. Thus, the Germans, very much against Kurt Meyer's wishes, against Max Wunsch's wishes, who's the commander of SS Panzer Regiment 12, the tank regiment. So they are forced to launch this attack the next day to maintain contact with the Panzerlehr and to hold the British back. And the Germans are so silly or they don't have any proper intelligence, no air reconnaissance, no signals intelligence. They haven't broken the Allied equivalent of the Enigma machine to get ultra intelligence. They don't know what's going on other than what prisoners they capture. So it's a very sad situation. And Dietrich and others in the headquarters of the 1st SS Panzer Corps order the entire Panzer Regiment of the Hitlerjugend to attack west and to attack the British 30th Corps to drive them back. And so this tremendous fight occurs at daybreak the very next day on the 26th, but it drags all the German tanks away from the center of the front of the 26th SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment of Oberstüben für Monka, effectively leaving them naked. So, to the east, there's ominous signs are present. The British 8th Corps is about to attack out of the former Canadian positions. SS Panzer Regiment 12 has been withdrawn to fight Operation Martlet and the 49th West Riding Division. So Martlet is working tremendously. The Germans are fooled, and all the German tanks they have are getting dragged westward. And the British are ready to attack with this Scottish division, the 15th Scottish Infantry Division, with the Churchill tank equipped. You see the Churchill tank right there, the 31st Tank Brigade in support. And there's no ready reserves. And the Panzer Lehr is pretty much a defeated force. Other than the Tiger Tank Battalion of Michael Wittmann, Hans van Westerhagen, who commands it, there's no real reserves for this. There's some Panzer divisions that are coming, but they're not at the battlefield yet, and they're not even close. These are the Waffen SS Panzer divisions, the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, the 1st SS Panzer Division Liebstandarte Adolf Hitler. The 2nd Panzer Division of the German army is pretty much fighting the United States near Caumont and holding the line there, and it could only give so much in the way of reinforcement units to help the Hitlerjugend. But the Germans believe right now with the 12th SS Panzer Division, they have the situation under control. The British are getting fought to a standstill near the village of Fontenay-le-Pesnel, and everything's going fine. But at the same time, there's hardly any anti-tank guns within the 2 battalions of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26 that are about to be overwhelmed by the British, and the 12th SS Combat Engineer Battalion, the SS Panzer Pioneer Battalion 12, which are very vulnerable to an armored heavy infantry assault, which is what is about the storm that is about to break upon them. And break upon them it does. Just as the heavy combat is going on near Fontenay and the German armored attack is going in there, they look to the east and the British are surging forward through the fields, and they overcome the 2nd Battalion. They overcome the 1st Battalion of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26. They completely overrun and take prisoner very large portions of SS Panzer Pioneer Battalion 12, the Combat Engineer Battalion. And the Germans are, Kurt Meyer, to his horror, orders everything stopped at Fontenay. And what forces the 3rd Battalion of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26 to stop and fight the British there, but everything else in the way of tanks is to drive backwards to try to save these 3 battalions, which are pretty much all is lost. They've been overwhelmed, they've been overrun, and the British surge forward with not one but 2 Highland Brigade and a Lowland Brigade, the 46th. Take a drink of water here. Highland Brigade and the 44th Lowland Brigade, of course, because you have Highland and Lowland Scots coming from Scotland. And behind them, lurking in the background, is the units, the armored regiment, as well, or armored brigade, as well as the infantry brigade of the 11th Armored Division. And so these huge tank battles occur, and there is one thing that stops the British this day from reaching the Orne River. There's only one thing. It's the determination of the Panzer IV crews of SS Panzer Regiment 12, the 2nd Battalion, under Sturmbannführer Prinz, and the Tiger tank crews, some of which are engaged in the south, near the villages of Moin and Granville-sur-Odon, which fire at extremely long range at the British Churchill tanks and the British infantry. And all that can be summoned from the 21st Panzer Division to help out to race over from Caen is 2 very weak companies of tanks, as well as some Sturmgeschütz assault guns from the 21st Panzer Division, which take up positions and begin to fire at the British from long range. But the villages, the German strongpoints of Saint-Mavaux, is lost. The River Mew, which is no more than a creek, is crossed. The important transit point of Chu is captured, but the Germans still are holding on to the Rauray Spur, if you see it on the left-hand side of the map, and they're fighting as hard as they can with the 6th, 5th, and 8th Panzer IV companies, and the Panthers to the left continue to fight the 49th West Riding Division. But it's a terrible situation because this is destroying a huge amount of the Panzer Division, the Hitlerjugend's Panzer Grenadier infantry component, which is getting wiped out in these battles. The only ones that have managed to survive that can fight again are the ones that have withdrawn. But very luckily, there isn't too much in the way of British air support during this time because it's either drizzle in the way of rain or pouring rain. It sort of intersperses between those two. It's always raining and it's terrible flying weather. So it's too little too late. The Panzers find the British in their former positions when they return from Fontenay. There's not enough German 7.5 centimeter anti-tank guns. The British infantry launches spectacular attacks despite having no air support due to rainy weather. The Panzers are the only thing really pretty much stopping them. The Tigers and the Panzer IVs and the Panthers. SS-Panzergrenadier Regiment 26 of Obersturmbannführer Monka is nearly destroyed, killed, wounded, captured, dispersed. There's no counterattack to save them, and the Panzers, when they come back, it's too late. An infantry division was needed to hold the line with the Hitlerjugend counterattacking, not this. Reinforcements are on the way, but not fast enough. And at this time, the 26th of June, at exactly the wrong time, the port of Cherbourg, the Battle of Cherbourg, the U.S. Army wins it, and Cherbourg falls. This creates a crisis in the German High Command, and the 7th Army Commander, General Oberst Dollmann, is ordered to be immediately relieved and a court-martial to occur. Of course, this doesn't happen right away, but Hitler is not focusing on what he should be focused upon. He's very much focused on this loss of the port of Cherbourg, which doesn't have anything to do with Operation Epsom or this very much decisive battle that's possibly occurring right on the front lines of the 1st SS Panzer Corps. So the British break through the next day. The center of the 12th SS Panzer Division collapses, and despite its best efforts to redeploy forces onto the left side and to the right side, the left flank and to the right flank, in the center, the British revolving door view. I'm sure all the viewers at home remember revolving doors on department stores as they're growing up. So we have a revolving door of British infantry battalions that are attacking, and one after another is getting spit out of this revolving door, and each infantry battalion has a full squadron of tanks supporting it. So by the middle of the day, the Germans, despite fighting as hard as they can, the 2nd Argylls manages to seep through, to filter through. It crosses the road from Vergent to Modrineville, turns back some weak German forces from the Hitlerjugend's Recce Battalion, as well as a couple of Panther tanks, and they cross over into Tourmeville and push forward. And by the end of the night, they actually seize the bridge across the Odon in the wooded area. And this is infantry moving first, not tanks. The tanks join them later. So we see in the year 1944, in this massive tank battles that's occurring right around them, it's the infantry that actually break through, not the tanks. And the Germans have nothing there. The British have completely broken through, so much so they can wander down beside the river's edge to the village of Gavris and to the outskirts of Bouron as more British units are pushed through. And the Hitlerjugend forces here have literally been chopped in half. And despite the Tiger tanks and the tanks of the 21st Panzer Division trying to do their best on the right side, there's just not enough of them, and they're poorly deployed. And so what needs to be strong, where it needs to be strong, the German front right in the center is weak, and the British push through. So the Hitlerjugend is being chopped in two. Half its forces are involved against the British 49th West Riding Division. What is present near Marcelet in Saint-Mavo to the east is barely holding on. The Liebstandarte and Das Reich forces, Battle Group Frey for the Liebstandarte, the 1st SS-Panzerdivision, and Battle Group Wendiger from the 2nd SS-Panzerdivision Das Reich are too late in arriving. They're still in transit. And they can only move so fast. And what they don't have with them, what hasn't been given to these battle groups, is actual tanks from their regiments, their regimental panzer regiments. So it's just infantry. Now, the British are, of course, the masters at defense. And the Scottish corridor, that's what they call it, because it's a corridor that's been chopped by the Scots of the 15th Scottish Division, is soon bristling with infantry, anti-tank guns, armor, and tank destroyers. And many Germans, such as this artillery officer here and his driver, are taken prisoner and marched to the rear as the Hitlerjugend of Oberstub and Fielmanka, the SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26 begins to collapse. And so, what was needed at this time? Definitely an armored counterstroke. But if you look below the Tiger tanks on the bottom right, they're operating in penny packets. 2 Tigers here, maybe 1 over here, all trying to use their guns to the ultimate long-range advantage, which means they aren't exactly charging through the British infantry or recapturing territory, but they are knocking out a lot of tanks. In places where they stupidly decide to drive forward, British anti-tank guns and anti-tank teams get the Tiger tanks, which are virtually irreplaceable as far as the very low production rates of Tiger tanks in Germany and the ability of the rail system to actually get them to the front. But what can be spared from the 2nd Panzer Divisions, which is to the west fighting the British and trying to support the Panzerlehr, is the Panzerabteilung of the 1st Abteilung, Panzer Regiment 3, which is the Panther Tank Battalion for Panzer Regiment 3, which is the Panzer Regiment for the 2nd Panzer Division. And it surges forward, but instead of attacking with all the Panthers, for some insane reason that's never properly explained, the battalion commander only pushes 1 company forward. And this company doesn't coordinate with the survivors of the Hitlerjugend, which are desperately trying to hold the British back. And so, right into the jaws of several British tank battalions in and around Choux and the little village to the southwest of it, I forget its name there. The Panthers drive forward, and before they know it, because of poor recce and lack of proper coordination, they actually drive amongst the British infantry, and the Germans don't know that they're the enemy, and the British infantry don't know that the German tanks are not British tanks. And so there's a period of confused combat before suddenly the British infantry swarm all around them and several German tanks are knocked out. It's very tragic for the Germans, and these very scarce armored reserves are basically thrown away in acts of stupidity. And of course, this is a new division, and this is the Panzerabteilung's first action since being issued Panther tanks. But at the same time, just as the Argylls and the 23rd Hussars, the tank regiment that starts surging towards the Odon River and the Odon River crossings, the Panther tanks fail miserably in what they were supposed to do, which is to go right up the road to Choux and to chop off the British penetration. But the 227th Infantry Brigade of the 15th Scottish Division, which is the 227th is the 3rd brigade of the 15th Scottish Division, and it manages to fight them off. And we see the 1st armored units of the 29th Armored Brigade of the 11th Armored Division pushing forward, but very slowly, very much scared, not scared, but very cautious of the Tiger tanks and the Panther tank fire. At the same time, the British 49th West Riding Division is keeping the pressure up, and they almost, but do not, capture the Roré Spur on this day, the 28th of June. But at this time, at this exact moment when the Germans need reserves, they've been fighting now for the 25th, the 26th, and now this is the 27th, and still no reserves other than these small number of Panther tanks and Tiger tanks from the Heavy Tiger Tank Battalion have arrived. So we have a commander here in these shots, these photographs from August, later when he's rested and he has a nice new uniform made of the Italian cloth. There's him and his chief of staff, Hubert Meyer, who writes the divisional history. There's Kurt Meyer, the war criminal who kills a large number of Canadian prisoners of war. He's someone who is overwhelmed by events. He's trapped in an impossible situation. The better part of an entire corps is attacking one half of his division, and he is getting simply ground down. He's getting pushed back. He's getting chopped in two. His level of overall control was badly impaired by the direction of 1st SS Panzer Corps and Brigade Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich, who's giving these very inept direction at this time to attack to the west, which allowed the British to destroy SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 26, as well as the Engineer Battalion. So he's very much a tragic figure who can't use the radio, and has to travel around by motorcycle simply to find out what's going on, because all the phone lines have been chopped by either tank treads or artillery shell fragments. So on the 28th of June, finally, the Das Reich infantry forces, Kampfgruppe Wedniger and the Kampfgruppe Frey of the Leibstandarte attack, and they want to attack right down the road from was it Granville-sur-Ordon right to Verzon, and they want to chop the British that are now holding the Odon River bridgehead to chop right through the neck of the Scottish salient, isolating the British 159th Infantry Brigade of the 11th Armored Division, as well as all the armored regiments, and then later on destroy them with the Panzer Regiment from from the 12th SS Panzer Division. So we have very determined battle here, and so we have some tanks from the 21st Panzer Division supporting the Leibstandarte in the east to make one pincer trying to chop the British off. And then there's the Panthers from the 2nd Panzer Division supporting the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Kampfgruppe Wedniger from Das Reich. But you see this by this map here, we have all these divisions sort of in a mishmash, very much disorganized. They've been thrown in here by the chaos of events. So we have certain tank units supporting infantry units from another division, and certain divisions units being very strong, others being very weak and retreating, others attacking. It's very much chaotic. But Kurt Meyer, the 12th SS Panzer Division commander, orders the Leibstandarte, which has been seconded under his command, to attack from the east. On the right side, the Das Reich is under the command of the Panzer Lehr, and been given the 2nd Panzer Division's Panther Battalion to support it, and they attempt to chop the neck of the Scottish salient, and they get very, very close. They get within 1 kilometer of each other. They can almost see each other, but the British hold on and fight back. And right in the neck on this road, this vital highway, some of the most determined British infantry defensive actions of the Second World War are fought, and the Waffen-SS is beaten back on either side from the west and from the east. And the what's left of the Hitlerjugend at this time is trying to rejoin its main body to the east and to get in front of the British, who are now in the Odon River bridgehead and surging towards Hill 113 and 112. And actually, Hill 112 falls to a weak British force, and the Germans immediately reply, but we have 2 weak forces trying to fight each other, and the hill changes hands several times over the next day. So as this is occurring, it becomes very apparent to the Allied High Command the British Second Army is fighting all the Panzer divisions, the entire Panzerwaffe in France. The 2nd SS Panzer Corps is closing in traveling all the way from Galicia on the Eastern Front, but not fast enough. And all its plans for a previous well-executed attack against the U.S. and British junction of the U.S. First Army and the British Second Army near Caumont are being dashed. In this tiny area, elements of the 2nd Panzer Division, the 21st Panzer Division, the Leibstandarte, the Das Reich, the 1 Heavy Tiger Tank Battalion are operating all nearly on top of each other, with the badly depleted elements of the Panzerlehr and the Hitlerjugend. And the rest of the 21st Panzer Division, it's fighting to defend Caen to the east, but some of its units are in this focal point. So we have all these Panzer divisions or elements of them all fighting in this tiny area to summon as much combat power, combat force as they can. And rushing in to save the day and drive a wedge between the Allies is the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, comprising of the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisionen, Hohenstaufen and Frundsberg. But all that can be summoned now is to be directed against Epsom, as the 1st SS Panzer Corps of the Panzerlehr and the Hitlerjugend has been badly defeated. And after the loss of the port of Cherbourg to the American First Army, Hitler is furious. And because of this ire directed at the 7th Army Commander Dolman, he is seen as the scapegoat. And on the 28th of June, very tragically, Dolman, at the exact wrong time, takes his own life. And at the same time, as the Cherbourg has fallen, Hitler becomes fixated on that. And at the height of this very, very decisive battle, Operation Epsom, Rommel, the commander of Army Group B in northern France, and Rundstedt, the overall commander of the West here, the Army of the West, OB West, Oberbefehlshaber West, that's his title. They're summoned to Bavaria, to Berchtesgaden, the mountain retreat of Hitler, on the 20th of June, at the height of the battle. So these key commanders are taken away by the insanity of Adolf Hitler. It's nothing but stupidity. So rushing to failure on the 29th of June, the commander of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, Paul Hauser, you see him there on the right, the 7th Army commander, General Oberst Dolman, kills himself in Le Mans on the 20th of June, and this forces a crisis in the command, as that a huge number of officers have to switch jobs at exactly the wrong moment. The well-planned, not well-planned, it's very rushed, it's disorganized, it's chaotic. This attack of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, at the key moment, the commander of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps is forced to take over the 7th Army, and everybody below him has to move up one slot in the command structure. So this is all occurring on the actual day, the day before the 2nd SS Panzer Corps is to attack on the 29th. The 2nd SS Panzer Corps is being forced towards its defeat by an enemy that, aided by ultra intelligence. Of course, this is breaking the Enigma codes and gaining this intelligence that shows the 2nd SS Panzer Corps arriving. The British at this stage very much are almost shutting totally down Epsom in order to go on the defensive, to cram in as many anti-tank guns and artillery pieces to literally blast the daylights out of the Germans, to bomb them back to the Stone Age, and to destroy this attack that's coming of the 1st SS Panzer Corps. And also, good weather is slated for the 29th of June, which means excellent flying weather for every Typhoon, every Spitfire, every Thunderbolt, every Mustang that can be summoned. And the Hohenstaufen and the Frundsberg are delayed and then beaten back by the British when they finally do get their act together on the 29th. And because of the fighter bombers and the disorganization and the rushed nature of everything, they can only mass their forces enough to attack at 2 p.m. on the 29th, not 6 o'clock in the morning, not 10 o'clock, not 11 o'clock, not 12, not 1. They have to wait almost into the mid-afternoon to do it. Of course, the sky is black with fighter bombers at the stage, and the Hitlerjugend, now defeated in the west, can only attempt to reorganize itself and fight the British near Hill 112 past the Adon. Over the next few days, Panzer Group West Commander Gerd von Schweppenberg orders the 2nd SS Panzer Corps to attack again and again and again, but all attacks fail. And this, I believe, is the decisive battle, or one of the most decisive battles, in that the German counterattack force that was to carry out this massive counteroffensive and to split the Allied bridgehead in two and actually defeat the Normandy invasion. All hopes for its success are dashed against the anti-tank guns and the 25-pounders of the British Second Army. 29th of June, you see the massive battle. Here's the battle map of it. So you see the Panzerlehr is involved, sort of as a bystander to the west. Then there's elements of the 2nd Panzerdivision, the 2nd SS-Panzergrenadier Division Das Reich, the 9th SS-Panzerdivision Hohenstaufen attacking on the northern side of the Adon, the 10th SS-Panzerdivision Frundsberg attempting to retake hills 113 and 112 and drive the British or contain the British bridgehead over the Adon. Then what's left of the Hitlerjugend and some forces are fighting near Hill 112. And beside them are parts of the Tiger Tank Battalion. And then the Leibstandarte, which has been defeated in its attack, and now it's getting driven back. But in the center of all is this Scottish corridor, who's been fortified just to a tremendous degree with the 15th Scottish Division, the 43rd Wessex Division, the 11th Armoured Division, the attached 4th Armoured Brigade, and the 30th Corps in the west, the 49th West Riding Division, as well as the 50th Infantry Division. And it's this huge amount of combat power on each side is facing each other, and they're battering away at each other. But the sheer force of the British artillery and anti-tank guns and the defensive firepower of the British infantry battalions, as well as the tanks that go in and launch armored counterattacks, allow both the Odon bridgehead and the neck of the Scottish corridor to be saved. And despite all this combat power, a lot of it is disorganized. You see very much everything's rushed, and the Germans can't properly command and control their units due to the lack of not being able to use radios, because the British can very much listen in, and when they're not listening in, they can triangulate the radio signals and launch artillery strikes as well as airstrikes on these headquarters and command bunkers, as well as Panzer command tanks, anything. So this is the dashing of German hopes. This is the end of their great counteroffensive, and it's the defeat that turns the Germans onto the defensive permanently within the Normandy campaign. So what's next for the Hitlerjugend? It still has half the division's infantry, which are SS Panzergrenadier Regiment 25, and it's defending with what's left of SS Panzergrenadier Regiment 26 Carpiquet Airfield, which is on the sort of the west side of this Caen bridgehead. That's what the Germans call it optimistically. It's ridiculous. Just take a drink of water here. But on the 4th of July, American Independence Day, the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, its first offensive attack since 11th of June. It got the break from 11th of June right until the 4th of July. It attacks with the 8th Canadian Infantry Brigade and 2nd Canadian Armored Brigade, and this huge battle occurs right on the airstrip of Carpiquet Airfield, and the Germans maneuver their tanks back and forth and manage to drive back the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, but the other 3 infantry battalions, the North Shore Regiment, the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada, and the Regiment de la Chaudière all surge into Carpiquet, overwhelming 2 German weak companies there. 2 German weak companies overcome by 3 battalions with tank support. It's a massively unfair fight. The Germans have their reserves based in northern Caen, but they're afraid of a German or a British attack from the north, which does not occur and won't occur until the 8th of July. But they don't push back against the Canadians right away, which is a fatal mistake in that they wait until the night arrives. And then on the night of 4th and 5th July, they launch a night attack, which parts of the 1st SS Panzerdivision Leibstandarte, which are still attached to and under command of the 12th SS Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, they launch this night attack, which the Canadians managed to repulse with heavy tank, machine gun, and anti-tank fire. and drive the German infantry back across the highway that leads from Le Villeneuve to Caen in the east. So the attack fails. But despite the massive, overwhelming force of the Canadian attack, they only managed to capture Carpiquet village. They do not capture the airfield and its billiard ball flat pool table flat area, which the panzer tanks drive around on and fire at the Canadians left, right, and center. But this salient has been driven into the west of the Hitlerjugend perimeter, which is ominous for the future. So, what is coming? Operation Charnwood is coming. This is the frontal assault to actually liberate northern Caen, which has been denied to the British Second Army since the 6th of June, when it was intended the city would fall. So 2/3 of a British corps, 2 full divisions against a shell of a panzer division. The British First Corps readies itself. There's certainly not enough anti-tank guns. And the anti-tank battalion that was supposed to join the 12th SS-Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, the SS-Panzerjäger Abteilung 12, or SS-Panzerjäger Abteilung 12, is not present. Not nearly enough infantry or reserves. I got his rank there. Standartenführer of Kurt Meyer is worried about an attack from Carpiquet and won't commit reserves readily. So he's very much worried about that Carpiquet airfield salient that's been driven right into the west. There's not enough obstacles in the way of minefields, anti-tank ditches, and on the right flank, defending against the British assault right against northern Caen is the 16th Luftwaffe Division, which is an Air Force infantry division, which has been made by Hermann Göring, to provide personnel for the German ground forces, but they don't really fight as an infantry division, and they're not very good at it. They don't have enough they do have a lot of heavy weapons. There's no other way to say it. They're not an army infantry division. And most of the now weakened 2nd SS Panzer Corps is now fully engaged near Hill 112 in containing the British. And to make things worse, on the 7th of July, during the evening, a huge 4-engined RAF bomber raid from Bomber Command is launched against northern Caen, and this is a taste of what is to come in late July in the way of the massive bomber raids during Operation Cobra and Operation Goodwood. But it only catches a couple of German tank units, a couple of Panzer IVs are lost, but the bombing airstrike, carpet bombing the Germans, it occurs in northern Caen, but the Germans manage to evade it. And the Allies are very much scared of bombing their own people, so they demand this huge sort of safety zone, which allows the Germans to escape this massive airstrike. But that doesn't save them. Operation Charnwood, the 8th of July, 1 battalion of the SS Panzer-Grenadier Regiment 25 at Buron is surrounded and destroyed. The rest are driven back. Despite driving the British assaults and attacks back, the 59th Staffordshire Division, a brand new fresh infantry division, attacks. The well-rested 3rd Canadian Infantry Division assaults Buron, and Gouchy, the Chateau d'Oulet falls, and the large German reserves, or what minuscule reserves they do have for the Hitlerjugend, they're very much arrayed against the village of Carpiquet and the airfield, afraid that the British will assault from there and logically try to cut everything off to the north and push right into Caen from the west. And to make things entirely much worse for the Germans, the 16th Luftwaffe Division in its first action, defending the village of Libisi, despite 21st Panzer Division support in the way of tanks, it crumbles, and the ones that aren't taken prisoner retreat toward northern Caen, exposing the entire right flank of SS Panzer-Grenadier Regiment 25. Meyer, despite driving back and forth on his motorcycle to see what's going on and ordering this armored assault with a reinforcement company, not a reinforcement company, but the final Panther tanks to be delivered to the unit under the command of Untersturmführer Untersturmführer von Ribbentrop, the son of the Reich Foreign Minister Rudolf von Ribbentrop. He attacks the Canadians, but he takes tremendous casualties as these British tank destroyers are waiting for him, and the attack to save the 3rd Battalion of SS Panzer Regiment 25 fails. But despite this heavy combat, the Germans managed to break contact during the night. Now, the first SS Panzer Corps direction via Hitler is that the bridgehead is to be held into the last man, to the last round, to fight to the death. But the chiefs of staff of the Hitlerjugend calls the chief of staff of the 1st SS Panzer Corps, which is a fellow named Fritz Kramer, and he says, we're being destroyed here. Kurt Meyer is on the phone as well. It's sort of a conference call saying we need to withdraw right away, or we'll be destroyed. And the British are going to sneak around us, and we can't withdraw. We have to withdraw our forces for what's left of the Hitlerjugend to survive. And Fritz Kramer, he says the magic words. Of course, if you are assaulted and driven back by overwhelming force, it could never be considered a withdrawal. With those magic words, the Hitlerjugend withdraws in the middle of the night, crossing the Orne, crossing into Caen proper, and getting out of the way of the British First Corps, which now faces them across the river on the 9th of July. At the same time, the Liebstandarte elements pull back, with part of the Panzer Regiment that's managed to survive. Conclusion, the Hitlerjugend is driven back and largely destroyed. It was used as a static unit defending a piece of ground the same way the Germans defended the Atlantic Wall, with the full force of the British Second Army battered it in successive attacks. It's being nearly chopped in two, forced the premature deployment of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps in this hurried, rushed deployment to attack, to do anything to stop Epsom. And the person that does this just before his suicide is the 7th Army commander, General Oberst Dolman, who is stung by this court-martial hanging over his head, possibly execution at the hands of Hitler for allowing the port of Cherbourg to call, overwhelms all opposition, and he's the highest-ranking officer in France then at the Normandy invasion front, with Rommel and Perch and Rundstedt gone to Berchtesgaden to meet with Hitler. So no one can override him due to the chain of command and rank in the German military. So he orders the 2nd SS Panzer Corps to attack prematurely, and this, of course, meets with disaster, dashing the Germans' last real hope to destroy the bridgehead. Using all of its combat power, it managed to hold Caen and blunt British offensives until 9th of July. This is the Hitlerjugend, when its last units crossed the Orne into southern Caen. The lack of a pursuit in the middle of the night by the British and Canadian forces allow it to escape. Crossing the Orne, the Hitlerjugend will soon be placed in reserve and reorganize itself into a reinforced battle group, a Kampfgruppe. Its Panzer Regiment would aid in the defense of Hill 112, Operation Jupiter, before being withdrawn as well. And of course, this is now on sale, and it is, my previous books were 200 pages. I'll see it there. This beast of a thing, it's 384 pages, 40 photos, 14 battle maps, $37.95 USD through RZM Imports Casemate. It's all ready to go there. So yes, that brings my presentation to an end, and now I will. I don't know. Tell me to stop sharing there, Gregory, and I will stop sharing if you wish me to, or should I keep that up there? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fine up there,
Okay.
Arthur. If anyone disagrees and wants to see more of our face, let me know. Arthur, that was really wonderful. I think you may have given the whole book away, which was very generous.
Oh no, no one's gonna buy it now. Oh dear.
No, I'm sure they will. I'm sorry, there's a lot in the queue here. Mike, I will start with you. Actually, I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, you have a question. Then I'll go to Mark and Gary. Mike, why don't you unmute your line and ask your question?
Yes, I have to say, Arthur, that was an incredible talk. I'm almost suffering from battle fatigue. And don't worry, we have to buy the book because we can't possibly remember everything you just said.
Yeah.
But I do have one point of information and a question. First of all, because I had extensive interviews with Lucky Fulton, the commander of the Royal Winnipeg Rifles Company that attacked the airport. They weren't pushed back. They were pulled back. They actually got into the airport. Lockheed thought, I mean, his company had been seriously depleted, and they only managed to get 3 tanks in support. But he felt that if they were reinforced, they could have held. But they were actually ordered back from there. He didn't know why, and he was a little ticked about it. But anyway, that's just a point of information if it helps. My question is supposedly, and I've gotten this from a couple of different sources, Kurt Meyer reported on the reported that as of the 26th of June, he had lost 2/3 of his fighting strength of the 12th SS. So that's as of the 26th, he said. Now, of course, Kurt Meyer did have some problems with truth, but as we know from his memoirs, but the fact is that that's what he reported. We do know that in the first week, the subject of your first book, the 12th SS took tremendous casualties. But I was just wondering, was that accurate? That they had lost 2/3 as of the 26th of June? They had lost 2/3 of their fighting strength, and again, how accurate are German? Because I found them to be, they would lowball their casualty figures. So I was wondering how accurate we know I am very skeptical of Hubert Meyer's book, but how low or how high how accurate their casualty reporting was.
Oh, okay. I'll answer everything here. The Royal Winnipeg Rifles at Carpiquet Airfield, yes, they were very, very close, and they were ordered back. If they had been reinforced, they could have carried the battle right into the hangars. But yes, the tanks weren't giving up either, the German tanks, but they got very, very close, the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, and it's a terrible tragedy that they were pulled back when, if they'd been reinforced, there was enough infantry forces there. There's 3 infantry battalions in the the village of Carpiquet. So it's a strange battle for the Canadian 8th Infantry Brigade. But yes, you were very much correct. Lockheed Fulton was right on top of the Germans there within the hangars. Moving on to casualties, I would say that due to the Parc de Boiselon fighting and Operation Martlet, as well as the bridgehead battles, I'd say possibly about 40% of the initial strength of the division had been lost. How would they have offset this? In a very much cannibalistic way. They had started to cannibalize the supply units, to punch those into. So Kurt Meyer saying, he may, but I think that the top number is probably about 40%, because SS Panzer Regiment 25 was still very much intact above Caen, and it just, sort of just fought on the 7th of June. It was SS Panzer Regiment 26 that took the majority of the casualties following the battles from about 8th of June on. And it had received, what it could in the way of reinforcements from the supply units. But I'd say roughly about 60%, maybe 65% of the division was still intact on the verge of the Martlet Epsom apocalypse, but that virtually destroys about half of that 65%. So after, Charnwood in July, when they come back to fight Operation Totalize in August, they can reform about 3 battalions worth. That's all they can do. That's the max they can do. And the Panzer Regiment is just a shadow of itself. So the division is pretty much destroyed after the 8th, 9th of July. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that answers it very well. If I have any other questions, I have other questions, but I'll give everybody else a chance first. Thank you, Arthur. Wonderful talk.
Likewise. Gary, if you want to unmute your line and ask your question, please go ahead. And we're a little tight on time, so if everyone can be a little.
Okay, I'll keep it fairly brief. I guess I'd like you to react to a comment I'm going to make, which is basically a lot has been made about Allied air power being one of the decisive factors, if not the decisive factor. But it seems to me that basically the organic firepower of the Allied ground forces, here we're talking about the Canadians and British, their artillery, their anti-tank guns, along with the naval gunfire, was really the decisive factor. And also, I'd like you to comment on my what I'm about to say, which is that often it was more effective in a defensive role. So, in essence, anytime they could get the Germans to attack them, they were probably going to the attrition factor is going to be higher when they are on the defensive than on the offensive role. And just one more thing on air power, if you could squeeze it an answer to, I don't really hear a lot about close air support at this point in time. It's more about interdiction and such. So, what was the state of close air support in the battles at this time for the Allies? And also, in terms of interdiction. I do note that you said that for an attack there was a lack of ammunition, but normally speaking, you need less ammo and artillery ammo when you're on the defense. So, is there any widespread shortages of artillery ammo on the German side when they're doing defensive operations, as in like we're literally out or practically out? All right, thank you.
Yes. I'll
And thank you for
come
a great
back to you
talk,
if I forgot one of these
by the way.
questions. There's a few of them, but yes, on the 29th of June, the weather gets very, very good. And that's the day of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps attack on the Scottish corridor. So the skies are black with typhoons, and they're very much, they strafe the Germans, they bomb them, they rocket them, and it's a field day. And some of the Panther tank crew accounts from the Hohenstaufen, which has a Panther tank battalion, they relate. There's also something I disapprove within this book is the Germans say post-war this is a ridiculous story, that there was 100 Lancaster bomber airstrike on the assembly area of the 9th SS Panzer Division. This never occurs. It's due to a firestorm of British artillery and naval artillery, as well as some fighter bombers thrown in as well. But a very large portion of the 9th SS Panzer Division Panzer Regiment and the Mechanized Infantry Half-Track Battalion, and there's one in each Panzer Division. It can't attack on the 29th because the artillery is so absolutely intense. It's so intense on the 30th, I think either on the 29th or on the 30th. I think it's the 29th. The famous war criminal Sturmbannführer Adolf Dickfield of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, which carries out the Odor-sur-Glane massacre when all the French civilians are thrown into the barn and set on fire. He's actually killed outside his command post. He wasn't wearing his helmet, and this huge shell takes his head off. But it's yes, you're absolutely right in that regardless of Allied air power, and it is absolutely hugely decisive in the later stages of the Normandy campaign, the airstrike of the United States Army Air Forces during Operation Cobra, the airstrike of RAF Bomber Command during Operation Goodwood, absolutely critical, the transportation plan, air superiority and stopping the Germans from doing any sort of ground attack missions, stopping their logistics. It's absolutely critical. But at the same time, there's this other monster beast, which is that of the cream of the British Army, the Royal Artillery, which it's much better than anything else. And thus, when it's on the defensive, and the Royal Artillery controls all anti-aircraft guns, all field artillery, all medium artillery, all super heavy artillery, all anti-tank forces, and it has its own command net, and it's much more sophisticated than anything else in the British Army, and the officers are the best, and it just blasts the living daylights out of the Germans. So it's the power of the defense is what is really this is the gem, or the keystone, is the sort of the diamond of the British Army, which makes it so strong. They don't advance very quickly in some kind of Desert Storm 1991 fashion, but they're absolutely lethal in the defense, and they beat back the panzers. And what was I going to say? That I believe, did I miss anything there, Gary? Did I miss anything?
Not really, but I just, I'm just with respect to its effectiveness in the defensive role as opposed to the offensive role. Not that it's ineffective offensively, but the artillery firepower as exhibited in these battles
Yes.
is generally speaking more effective in treating the enemy in the defensive role because the enemy is exposing themselves to the firepower. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it was absolutely spectacular in the offense with its creeping barrages, and it could move back and forth, and they could mass all the firepower from, say 800 guns on one German bunker through Mike targets. But yes, and they had the deep pockets, all the shells in the world, all the shells they could fire. They couldn't fire them fast enough, and the Germans could not get enough shells into the bridgehead due to the logistics challenges, and they're trucking them up from Paris and from the supply dumps there. But the railroad is not functioning, and so there's this tremendous artillery war that the Germans can't fight and they can't win, and it's killing all their people. It's the artillery that kills the German infantry, not anything else. Well, the airstrikes do, and carpet bombing does a great job, but it's the nonstop, daily, hourly artillery strikes. Hopefully that works for you.
Thank you for your great presentation and your answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Mark, if you want to unmute your line and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. First of all, a thank you to our Canadian presenter. Thank you very much for this. Very interesting. Then second, a comment, then a question. And the comment, a very quick one, is that there's a saying that there are only three things inevitable in life. The first is taxes, second is death, and the third is German counterattacks. And so one theme that I'm kind of getting out of your presentation is that the Germans, the Hitlerjugend, and in addition to Leibstandarte and everything, they did do some counterattacks, but that I'm kind of wondering whether would they have been better off, despite, because they had these restrictions with the air power and the firepower of being as dynamic as they wanted to, in addition to the radio triangulation that they were afraid of. Would they simply have been better off saying, okay, we can't do this like we want to, and it's our strength. Let's just hold back and then just be defensive and try to kill as many of the enemy as we can as a defensive operation. Is that, why didn't they do that?
Oh, it was very much, they're driven by orders from above, by corps commanders looking at maps who didn't really understand the scale of artillery fire or what the attacking troops were going up against. And there was a very brutal disconnect in that the Germans operated as if they were going to be reinforced or there's more of them coming, when in reality, every Panther tank that was, caught on fire, that was it. There wasn't another one coming. There wasn't another Tiger after that one was lost. So you see, especially the worst example of this is the Parc de Beauzélande fighting against the 1st of the 6th British Duke of Wellington's regiment. Battalion there, the 1st of the 6th Battalion. They annihilate that British battalion, but the cost of doing so, they're spending money that they can't, they're writing the checks that they can't cash. The checking account balance is going down, but there's no more money coming in. And when the money does come in the way of reinforcements or new tanks, or it's maybe back in Germany or is 6 or 7 months from now. And this is a tremendous disadvantage for the Germans in that it curtails some of their tactics and their actions. And some of these counterattacks that are ordered, such as the Fontenay counterattack against Operation Martlet to regain contact with the Panzer-Lehr, it's tremendously costly, and it diverts the entire Panzer Regiment away from what should be its true focus, which is the British 8th Corps, and the British walk all over them. So it's these, it's attempting to fight when you don't have enough, resources to do so. And that is the tragedy of it for the Germans. In the long run, should they have potentially waited in ambush and just ambushed the British again and again and again, maybe they would have lost less people and still be pushed back at the same relative rate of loss of territory. So it's an important question, but it sort of delves into the what if area. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that's reluctant, but the Germans had one of the best officer corps in the war. Why was that? Why was there that disconnect? And I'll shut up after that.
Oh no, it's they were doing everything they could right. But often, what they wanted to do was to maneuver away from the range of the battleships. And Gere von Schweppenberg and others recommended withdrawing right to the Seine River and surrendering the entire western portion of France to the Allies. And there's that logical approach to things. And then there was Hitler demanding that the bridgehead be contained at all costs. And so the British battleships just continued to fire. So the Germans tactically did everything they could right with what limited resources they had, but often were fighting in too aggressive a manner, taking losses they could not afford, hoping that somehow more units or strength would come to relieve them or help them. But in many cases, that help was not coming. And so, thus, they should have been more cautious, more restrictive in some of their operations. But at the same time, they felt that certain hills, certain salients in the line needed to be eliminated, and thus they made ultimate efforts using what resources they could to their maximum. But often, once that money was spent, there wasn't any more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Let's see, Arthur, do you have a few more minutes? There's
Sure.
in the queue here I want to get to. Okay, Evelyn, thank you so much for a great talk. A small question about command structure. Was the 16th Luftwaffe Division still under command of the Luftwaffe, or were they seconded to another command?
That's yes, they were. They're under the new. It was established the 84th German Corps, which is I'm forgetting when the switchover occurred, but it wasn't, I don't believe, is under the command of the 1st SS Panzer Corps during Operation Charnwood, but it's very much treated as an army formation under army commanders. Its division commander was an army officer, but these were all Luftwaffe personnel trained as infantry, given weapons, expected to act as an infantry division would. They're given the titles of the regiment were Jaeger, hunter. This 3 hunter regiments of several battalions, but the Army ability in the way of proper training for the NCOs, proper training for the junior officers, it wasn't really there. And it's not to say that some Luftwaffe ground formations, such as the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, did not perform spectacularly well on the Eastern Front and in Italy, but this one was simply battle not experienced, very green, and overrun by the British and the sheer firepower deployed against it, as well as a sense of hopelessness when the 21st Panzer Division doesn't come to rescue it. It continues to fight, and the other half of it is destroyed during Operation Goodwood in late July. But it's not that some of these Luftwaffe soldiers don't fight hard enough; they're just simply overwhelmed.
Got it. Reed, this is a two-parter, Arthur. Interesting. You talk about units and their movements and engagements. Please talk about the history, recruitment, morale, ideology of the Hitlerjugend division. Any first-person interviews, memoirs, diaries that speak to these factors. maybe Arthur, if you could comment on that for a minute or two.
Oh,
Give you a second
a
question.
little bit of my first book talks about that, but the focus of these two books is pretty much the fighting in Normandy. There's some excellent books. Probably the best one is French author Stefan Cazenave, which produces these glossy, spectacular collections of photos and text. But yes, they are from the year of, what is it? 1926, 1925, and these are all former Hitler Youth, very much indoctrinated. And then the first SS Panzerdivision, Leibsoldat Adolf Hitler, is split in half in Russia. The remainder gets some Luftwaffe replacements in Russia. The other half comes to France, and it forms the 12th SS Panzerdivision. It takes these huge groups of 18, 17, 19-year-olds and molds them into soldiers from the period October, November 1943, right until June 1944. The training is intensive. It's realistic. It's with a tremendous amount of resources. The Panzer Division is extremely well equipped by 1944 standards, with a Panther Battalion as well as a Panzer IV Battalion and a Panzer Jaeger Battalion with self-propelled guns, which joins it later in August. And 3 battalions of artillery, flak battalion, an anti-aircraft battalion, an engineer battalion, a armored recce battalion, and they're all highly motivated because they have seen Germany bombed. They've seen German, families, houses destroyed, and yes, they're highly motivated by this. But the division fails in the first few days after the Normandy invasion because they attempt to fight as they would in Russia under these officers from Russia, from the Eastern Front, and they fail miserably. But yes, hopefully that very quickly answers your question.
I'm sure it does. This is part 2 of Reed's question. Any records of the German forces being initially aligned in defense beyond the range of naval gunfire? Was the lack of such part of Hitler's no retreat orders? Yeah.
Yes, it was very much entirely that. Of course, the Allies at Anzio, at Salerno, in Sicily, they'd all lined up their battleships and heavy cruisers as close to the coast as they could and fired away in support of flipping the German tanks on their sides and that sort of thing. So this was nothing new, but other than Erwin Rommel, a lot of the generals this is very much tragic for the Germans. They were Eastern Front fighters. They didn't understand Allied air power. They didn't understand the power of the Royal Navy or the United States Navy. They didn't understand what a 4-engine bomber was or what it could do. So there's very much, yes, Hitler is ordering these things, but he's looking at a map in Bavaria, and he's not there, and he's not talking to the people, and doesn't understand, and he never will. And it's this terrible reason in Adolf Hitler why the war for Germany was very much lost by arguably December 1942.
Last question from Tim. Brilliant talk. Have read and loved your 2 books on bloody Verrières, and we'll read these 2 soon. Question: you seem to have walked a level of historical research that isn't common. Are there other books that look at the tactical operation level of Normandy from the German side? It seems there would be more books from this perspective, plenty from the US side, including the Green Books, but where else can we read this from a German perspective? And then what is your next project? Maybe we'll close on that, Arthur.
The next project, which I'm under contract with from Ruth Shepard at Casemate Publishing, is Volume 3 of the Defeat and Attrition of the 12th SS-Panzerdivision, which deals with its fight against Operation Total Eyes, Operation Goodwood, and its escape from the Flay's Pocket. There's a historian, his name is Douglas Nash, who gives the same sort of detail, but on the Eastern Front. The ones that give the detail on the Western Front, during the Arnhem fighting, there's someone called Marshal Zvorts, which you can check out these books. They're very hard to get. They're very expensive, as well as books in French by that Stefan Kazanavi and other ones such as Max Stein that deal with the German perspective with the ultra detail, which is what I'm very much attracted to. There's only so much ultra detail you can get with one of these little guys, but the French authors, they have these very spectacular books. I'll grab one of them. There's something like it. Well, it's it's I can't grab it right now, but they're tremendously glossy. They're tremendously expensive. They're very, very large. And they're entirely French text, but they have all the photos, all the order of battles, all the text. And, we're talking about sometimes 400 pages, but then we're cruising into the $120, $130 United States dollar type of sales figure. But they are absolutely beautiful. And they cover things from the German perspective, and they're published through the publisher Heimdall, does a lot of them in French, as well as books on the U.S. Army in Normandy and the British Army in Normandy are published in French. So there's this Anglophone world that we think of for books, but in Normandy itself, there's a military history center that the French that are running, and they're just pumping out these books like crazy.
That's awesome. And Arthur, just for our benefit, is this a planned trilogy, or how many volumes would the Defeat and Attrition be when it completed?
This is a planned trilogy. I'm only really interested in the Hitlerjugend during the Normandy campaign. It fights during the Battle of the Bulge, during the Battle of Elsborn Ridge, and against the 2nd U.S. Infantry Division, these cataclysmic battles there. But I'm not really interested in those. I don't know what I'll do next after this Volume 3 is completed. Perhaps a book on the Eastern Front. I am very interested in the Germans. But who knows? I may also do a book potentially on the Holocaust or something like that. That sort of interests me as well. There's a million different things, and doing a book a year, you approach burnout very quickly. So
how long would sounds like you're just at the beginning stages of Volume 3. How long does that take?
I signed the contract with Ruth in December, and they want it. They want the first cut by December of 2026. And then then it's a 4-month period where the editors and the peer reviewers go at it. Everything gets edited, the maps get fixed, the photos get inserted, the titles, the title page, the cover art has already been selected, but then they go for maybe it'll be like a March or April 2027 release. So there we go.
Yeah, fantastic. Would love to have you back for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for today. Wonderful talk, wonderful Q&A. Again, the book is The Defeat and Attrition of the 12th SS-Panzerdivision Hitlerjugend, Volume 2, Operations Martlet, Epsom, Windsor, and Charnwood, 11 June through 12 July 1944 by Dr. Arthur Gullachsen. Please join us next Saturday, February 7th at 1 p.m. when historian Doug Mose will discuss his book, Launching Liberty, the Epic Race to Build the Ships That Took America to War, which tells the overlooked story of one of World War II's monumental achievements, the building of America's fleet of Liberty ships. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to having you next week. And Arthur, as always, we definitely hope to have you back, want you back for Volume 3. And until then, good luck with it. I have no doubt it'll be as impressive as the first two, but really enjoyed your time today.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure to appear.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.